Hey, buddy, what's shaking?
How we doing?
Not too bad. You, sir, are not golfing. Oh, too much?
No, actually, just from working out a little bit a little too hard today. I ripped my hands wide open, so I might have to put golf on the back burner a couple days.
Well, it looks like it. So, like, just the knurling? What got you? How'd that happen?
You're gonna hate this, but I was bringing together some kipping pull-ups.
Wow. I'm making judgments that I'm not going to actually.
Go ahead, make
Just kidding.
a lot of different things. I will say I've done a lot of different things since being in the team. I've kind of expanded a few things, stay competitive, stay active. It's been actually pretty good.
That's
Nothing else.
cool.
Probably a lot of things I won't carry over to my own profession, but on personal life.
So, what specifically got you doing kipping pull-ups, though?
So when I got home, the only thing I have access to is my dad's best friend, and he's a straight CrossFitter. So I've been CrossFitting the last probably four to five. So yeah, and I've been full on going for it. It's been good. It's been different. There's some things I obviously agree with, some things I don't, but it's been a good.
So, are you trying things to sort of validate maybe why you didn't conceptually agree with them? Like, are you sort of just I'm going to embrace it and like see what happens like going through an actual workout or
Yeah, I think it depends on how you look at it, because I look at CrossFit as a sport, like in itself.
okay,
So, you know what I mean? So I think if you look at it as a sport in itself, then it's a lot easier to probably agree with. But if you just look at it as like a form of training, then it's kind of, you know what I mean? If you're training for a separate sport and you're using CrossFit thing, it's risk reward, obviously.
right. Starts Things start
Right.
to separate out a bit more.
But you can say the same thing for people that play football, people that play tennis, people that play this. Like, there's a lot of different risks that kind of get involved. But some people, whenever they get done competing in different sports and stuff, they don't really have anything. That's why people take up golf. That's why people fish. That's
For
why people,
sure.
and then also staying active. I think another thing a lot of people don't give enough credit for is that CrossFit has made the United States, especially, a lot more active. And it's also brought a lot more attention to Olympic lifting. So the Olympic lifting community can thank CrossFit a lot for that. But yeah, I didn't think we were going to get on here and just go into a full CrossFit tangent.
Well, you never know. That's the problem with, or the great thing about an open conversation is
Yeah,
who knows where it's going to go, right? Well, and one of the things about CrossFit that's always a challenge is it's a brand.
yeah,
It's sort of, and I mean this in sort of a loose way in pencil, but it's a style of working out, if you will.
yeah.
Um, but then to your point, if you take it as a sport, like when people really dig in, like some of the other fundamentals that we would end up talking about in general end up getting applied,
Yeah,
where like people periodize, like obviously they try to peak in terms of when their regionals occur, right? Try to get to the games, etc.
it's unbelievable
Um,
when you start looking at some of that stuff. I will say that, like how people program in the periods of everything, how they try to like actually optimize for those events. It's really, really interesting, super interesting. And
no, absolutely.
it's so much that goes into it too, which is, it's a lot different. But I don't know. I liked it. I'm really competitive, so it's been fun, kind of keeping me competitive. Gives me something to look forward to every day. I've
Let you
normally,
tear your hands apart.
yeah, obliterated. And it was funny because the guy was like, he's trying to get me to use the grippers things, and no, I can't do that. That would make me the ultimate CrossFitter if I started using grippers and everything. And I was like, yeah, my hands are good. I was like, they're all calloused up, so I'm fine. And then sure enough, today we did, because we're going to do Murph on Memorial Day. We did sit today, which is like 20 minutes of five pull-ups, 10 push-ups, 15 air squats, as many rounds as you can possibly do. And one of my friends just texted me like a goal, and I just wanted to beat it. So I just killed myself. And next thing you know, I looked down, my hands were full of blood. I was like, this is dumb. So
Well, yeah, the bummer and like that it affects you like for tomorrow.
yeah,
You
it
know,
affected
that's kind of when you end up feeling like it's become dumb. But
yeah. Well,
in go
shower.
ahead.
I took a shower. My hands are on fire, and I wanted
That's true. I didn't think of that.
to, whatever. That's fine.
So, uh, so obviously we didn't get you like golfing while we were chatting.
Yeah.
But the two other things, because we just talked a couple of days ago for people who were listening, but uh, bourbon
Yes.
and cigars, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
also two things that COVID-19, we'll blame it on the virus, is kind of allowing you to explore a bit more fully.
Yeah. A little bit.
What's our update? What's our update with those? Because as a cocktail hour, I thought maybe you might pull one of these and be like, so the bourbon of the day is.
Yeah. So I put my peak in a cup, just being a university in Portland, trying to figure that part out. But it was actually fun. So I found a cigar bar for the first time in my entire life when I was in Philadelphia, and I kind of found it as a way on like a Friday night after a game, like when I don't feel like going home yet and just kind of want to wind down a little bit. I stopped there with one of my buddies who's also a strength coach at Temple, and he took me and I went to this cigar bar, and it was just like really relaxing, put me to sleep, whatever. And I came home and asked my dad just the other day. I was like, hey, is there anywhere I'm in Robinson, Illinois, which is the middle of nowhere. Is there anywhere in Robinson, Illinois that you can get a cigar? And he goes back. It was a really cool moment, actually. He goes back to his closet and pulls out just 6 cases of like
No kidding.
$5,000 worth of cigars that
That's awesome.
I had no idea my dad has ever smoked a cigar in my life, actually. I've seen him actually smoke a cigar once when my best friend got married. I was best man in the wedding, and my dad was an usher. We smoked a cigar. That was the first time I ever smoked a cigar, first time I ever saw my dad. And little did I know, my dad is a cigar connoisseur.
Nice. So had he then, as you were growing up, just sort of hidden that from you? Like maybe we don't want to let our son know that smoking's this thing.
I didn't see my dad drink until I was probably 20 years old. I probably saw him maybe drink one or two one-off beers. And then when I turned like 20, 21, and I was in college, I started to see it, and it was a lot different. So it's funny that now that I'm older, I'm seeing so many different.
Yeah. So what we're saying there is, in your professional experience now, even though your dad did the best that he could to keep you from seeing those vices, I've opened up with bourbon and cigars.
Correct.
And really done your dad a total disservice. So, all
He's
right.
he's all in at this point. He's completely all in at this point. Or like,
Well, that's cool.
it was good for him. So growing up, he really wanted me to see him like freaking beers or drinking scotch or smoking cigars and stuff like that. So as I got older, knowing that I'm responsible, he has a pretty. And it's kind of cool. Now, he drinks Crown Royal. He doesn't really drink much bourbon. He drinks Crown Royal and a couple different things, and we drink plenty of Busch Light, and that's what we got over here is Busch Light. Drink plenty of Busch Light. We fish and we hunt and we do all that, but little did I know that he has a little classiness to him because his name's Bubba. He's got a little classiness.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, yeah. My dad's name's Bubba, so he's got a little classiness to him. He smokes cigars, I guess, every once in a while.
So how big is the town you grew up in?
It's 5,500 people, 6,000
Okay.
people. And we're the biggest town within an hour, actually.
So then what's the transition to Philly been like for you?
Well, so I went to Eastern Illinois University, which is about 18,000 people, and it's campus.
Right.
Like the first time I ever went somewhere, I was like, holy cow, there's people here. And then I went to Champaign, Illinois for my first job, and that's like, I don't know what, it's probably 80 to 90,000 people, so it's a little bit bigger. And then I moved to Bradenton, Sarasota, which I thought was a city. I thought Sarasota was a city. And then now Philadelphia. So it's been like a gradual increase over time. So it's been a lot different. I guess. The parking, I mean, you come home from work and you freaking take an hour to park. That's the worst part about it.
Yeah, parking, particularly in Philly,
Yeah,
it's a sport in and of itself.
it's
So
absolutely a sport. And then you better be able to parallel park. And people play cars, and that's just what they do. You're gonna come out. You're gonna have little dings in your car. That's just part of it. You know, people just boom, 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 and then they get out, and then they're good. But,
yeah, I went through learning the parking thing when I moved to Chicago right out of college for a while
yeah,
and thought I was a pretty good parallel parker. And then I learned what quality parallel parking really is
yeah,
by watching some folks like squeeze into spots that they probably had no business squeezing into. So you mentioned like post game. So does your competitive side keep you from calming down post game? So you
yeah,
mentioned like you went to the cigar bar. Like, do you kind of get into every single game?
yeah. I don't want to say that I lived through it, but I do a little bit. I think my competitive side kind of comes out a little bit. I know I've gotten so many text messages actually, just because with the American Conference we actually have like a pretty good deal with ESPN, so we're on national television like a lot. And I'll get text messages that I'll see after the game, like, dude, like lay off the gum. Like I had to stop chewing gum, chewing gum so hard, and I'd have like my phone of me just like, or videos of me just chewing the crap out of some gum. So I got to figure out like some other little like nervous habit to take care of. But after the game, I'm like, if we win, we normally aren't like, there very long, which is good. But if we lose, we're going to watch the whole game for sure. Uh, so it just kind of depends on the game. But I definitely have a lot of trouble winding down after games, after road trips, after, even during, like, whenever we're in heavy training, like, I have trouble winding down even then. That's where golf is good, stuff like that. Just having outside influences that kind of take my mind away from it, because I'm a person that's just like, it's all I think about. It's all I want to do. It's all it's just too much.
So safe to assume then that translates to high energy in the room when the guys are in there lifting?
Yeah, it's, you, yes and no. Because my guys especially, and a lot of basketball players too, they don't really respond real well to the high energy. Like they almost see it like phony in a way, I guess.
Mm.
Because basketball players in general don't really like to train. So honestly, it's almost more of like relationship based training for my guys, especially smaller groups. When it's bigger groups, it's high energy because you have to be to control the room. Like that's the only way to do it. So it kind of almost depends. So especially because during the season, whenever we practice, we use the weight room every day as our warm up. Like that's how we transition onto the court. Every day we practice or every day we play, we're going to start in the weight room. Like that's how we start. Whether it's 30 minutes, whether it's 20 minutes, whether it's an hour, whatever it might be, we use that. So, a lot of that has to do with energy and making sure when we step on the court, Coach McKee knows that, we're good to go. So on those days, a lot of times, yeah, it's really high energy. On more of the individual training, when it's like with the red shirts or we're during the summer and we got smaller groups, it's more relationship building and we're training hard. But we have those times of just realness where we're actually having conversations between sets and stuff like that. But during the season, when it's a full team training session, it's a lot harder to get that. But I like to think I'm a relationship-based coach rather than kind of a rah-rah cheerleader guy. But
Well, and you can certainly blend them, but I mean, kind
you
of to
can.
your
Certainly.
point, you've also got to know your audience, right? So if they're not
Yeah.
going to respond, there's not much point in
No, there's
going
not.
full like high energy.
I
So
mean, like, great guys. They're compliant. They're awesome. They're going to do whatever I ask them to do. But, if you just really want to build a relationship, get in and out of it, meeting people and speaking to people genuinely.
yeah, being genuine is kind of a big deal. So one thing I wanted to ask, like you mentioned, you start everything in the room. I didn't get to come out for the install when
Yeah.
we were there. Are you then right off of the floor, or what's the layout like there?
When you walk into our practice facility, the first room on the left is our weight room. And then you walk down a little bit of a hall. If you turn left, it goes to the locker room. If you right, practice facility. It's probably 15 yards from there.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So we're 15 yards from the court. So basically, what actually ends up happening is we start with film. They start in the film, which is like if you turn left, you go in the weight room. If you turn right, you go in. They'll start in the film room, and then they'll come straight to me in the weight room, and then they'll transition straight out to the court. Basically, is how kind of our whole day runs every single day. There's kind of a transition like, hey, we start with basketball film, we start in the weight room, and then it's like a real quick, because I personally hate the dynamic warm-up every day during practice. The coaches hate it. The players hate it. We just use it just to get going. We transition from the weight room to moving on the court, and then we go straight into practice. And we utilize the first probably 2 drills of practice to really get the guys going full speed in the sense of sprinting and whatever. But we get all the general prep done in the weight room, gym
Gotcha.
stuff like that, all sorts of different things.
So then, like one of the things I was thinking about, because even though we were joking about bourbon cigars and golf the other day, so you accept the position, you get ramping up on your first season, but you don't even really get to finish it.
No, you
right?
don't even.
Because of COVID.
Weird. It was a weird, super weird season because we got a late start so I got the job in April. The money basically didn't get approved because they told me like, hey, you get a new space, you're going to build a weight room, you're going to do this. And then how it really works is you don't really get your money for a long time from what I found out. But finally finalized where the space was going to be, what we were going to be able to do. I didn't really get my weight room until December of the year. So, you guys came in and installed, EliteForm installed, and then Hawkins Dynamics came in, installed, Sorinex came in. And by the time that we're actually functioning in that weight room, it's December. We're getting ready to go into conference play. And then you go 3 months of training in that weight room where you're kind of feeling everything out. And then the next thing you know, it's just season's done. And then there's no off-season training other than me sending workouts, online.
Right. So how are you thinking about, and here's my more serious question, right? So how are you thinking about like ramping back up, like assuming you're able to like get everybody back in a kind of a somewhat reasonable time frame, right? Because I assume your guys wouldn't go home over the summer, and they would have stayed.
Probably for summer one. Last year we trained straight through everything, basically.
Mm-hmm.
They got probably a total of 14 days off, and some of that was voluntary, some of it wasn't. A lot of my guys stayed because they wanted to stay. New coach, right. They wanted to prove themselves, whatnot. But this year I think we planned on being home for summer one, and then we planned on being back on campus by at least June 24th. So what we really are missing is like that 6-week block of April through the first 2 weeks of May, till about really right about now. I think graduation actually would have been last weekend. So until this weekend, I would have had that 6 weeks block to train. They would have went home for probably, 4 or 5 weeks, and then we come back and then we basically train all the way till mid-August. So now, you basically go from full competition mode to not even really a decondition. It's just more like, hey, boom, done. Now it's going to be like we're trying to figure out where we're going to be. Because if we're in yellow, we got to work out outside. If we're in green, we can work out inside. But we're going to be yellow before we're ever green. But then if you come back on campus and you're only allowed outside, how are you going to play basketball? Are we going to just go to the park? So there's a lot of it's going to be a lot of questions on how we kind of ramp guys back up. But the NSCA's done a pretty good job of giving out protocols and stuff like that, volumes, intensities, and stuff like that too.
So, but when the guys finally do come back, you'll have all your tools then that you wouldn't have had like when you first came on. So, what are going to be some of sort of those core things you're going to start like looking at in terms of metrics? And I'm not asking you to give any sort of EF spiel. Obviously, you got Hawken and stuff like that. This is a no spiel program, but like what are the key things you're going to look at to kind of start mapping things out going forward?
Well, in reality, we probably won't have those things still. We'll be back at ground zero, maybe even less, because we'll be working outside. We're talking about a tent. We're talking about literally setting up a tent outside, putting squat racks out there, setting up plywood if we wanted to ever do any Olympic lifts, and then some power blocks and some kettlebells and sandbags. That's what we're looking at if we do come back originally. And then we'll start transitioning in. But we have, I'm trying to think, I think we got 6 guys returning. So there's only been 5 or 6 guys introduced to the old stuff. Now we got a whole new fresh batch of guys, 5 freshmen, I think, 4 or 5 freshmen we got coming in that's never even lifted weights before. Literally all of them have never even lifted weights before. And then,
so just to make sure I'm following,
yeah,
like you already know enough about them to know they've never lifted before. This isn't just a generic fixing freshmen comment. You literally know these particular people haven't lifted.
And my training program has been telling them what to do, but I'm not with them, and they've never stepped really even foot in a weight room before. So they're coming in at ground zero, and we're going to be kind of a little bit behind, to be honest, because we don't get some of the time that we would have had, nor will we be in our space, nor will we have some of the tools that we have. I got guys coming off injuries, so there's a lot of different things that we're going to have to manage for sure, and that's where you guys and Hawken will be really honest, because especially with the guys coming back from injuries and return to play and kind of stuff like that. So it'll be interesting, really interesting to say.
So it's really going to be year 3 for you, potentially, until you're actually going to hit what most people would know as a regular schedule.
Correct. And that's odd. And I think when I was at IMG Academy, I was there for 2.5 years. I think I was starting my second year whenever I felt like, hey, things are starting to go pretty smooth. And like this room's kind of running itself. Like I felt like I could sit in front of the room, give kind of my little spiel at the beginning, and then guys just knew what to do. They understood what was expected. Where now it's going to be a situation where like it's going to be a constant, like we're trying to establish. And then, but we're kind of behind the 8 ball, and I didn't really get to do it last year. Now we got a whole new batch of guys, and that's kind of part of it, and that's what you get in college basketball. You get 13 guys at a time. At IMG Academy, I was working with 200 kids. Like 200 kids that I was working with, which is working a ton. But yeah.
A lot of reps, so to speak.
Yeah, I will say that.
And also multiple sports, right? Am I remembering that correct? Like you didn't just handle.
Yeah, my first year I was there, I was with like every sport there. And then my last year and a half, I pretty much just transitioned only to basketball. And then kind of just, I was over a lot of different teams with that. Because there's like, I think there's 17 or 18 basketball teams there, including men and women. So it's hard to even explain or conceptualize. So when you say reps, you get more reps coaching at IMG Academy than you would anywhere else. I don't know where else you would go and get team training or you get that type of experience. I don't think you could really go anywhere else and get that, to be honest, just with everything that they have to offer and what you do there.
Well, yeah, IMG it's definitely its own animal in a way, just in terms of kind of what exists. I don't even know how to put it, like at that location. Like you need some sort of a broad brushstroke comment to even encapsulate it. It was funny. I asked our crew, like, are there any questions they wanted me to throw your way? Yeah. And Avery, being Avery, was like, well, yeah, ask him what the most frustrating thing about working at IMG was. Now, obviously, we're not going to ask you to answer that. But because it's nothing but love. And there's a lot of people that have come out of IMG that, like, we still work with today. Obviously, you've got Coach Ballou, et cetera. Were you, when Avery and I were down there with the initial install and we did the large training, were you in the room that day?
When you did the initial install, I think it was the summer. Was it during the summer? Do you remember?
It was during the summer, yeah.
That was when the room they just put the racks in. I was actually, this is wild to even think about this. I remember seeing you guys. I'm pretty sure we might have like spoke a little bit in passing, but I was summer staff at that point. I was working at the University of Illinois underneath Adam Fletcher, and Fletch told me, he said, hey, go down to IMG Academy because of the exact reason we're talking about, the amount of experience you get in coaching. And every single day I was on the floor from 7 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and I was coaching the entire time. You get about an hour at lunch, or you can lift before, or you can lift at lunch, or you can lift after. Zero chance you're lifting after work, after those days being out in 100 degrees. But I just remember seeing you guys because I was down there for 3 months as a summer staff, and it was one of the best summers of my life, I will say that. And living in Bradenton, Florida, not knowing anything else, and working down there. I remember you guys being down there doing that install. So funny how that kind of turned full circle.
Would you say that then your time at IMG is where you started to establish who you were going to be as a coach going forward? I know that sounds a little cliche, but it seems like a lot of coaches will mark this point in time where they felt like they really started to connect the dots.
Yeah. And I think that I got that because you meet guys like Dave Ballou. You meet there's other guys that are down there that you wouldn't even know their name, but they're incredibly smart. I mean, they have a great staff down there. So you've got 15 strength coaches that are down there, and we're all doing different things. Everybody's competitive too. Like, you're competing and you don't even know it. You know what I mean? Like, you walk in a room and you see, Will Townsley over there. He's running baseball, and he's an incredible strength coach. And the way he runs a room, you're like, holy cow, like, that's kind of intimidating how well he runs a room. Go talk to the lacrosse strength coach, Matt Wheaton, who's a sports science guru. He's the kind of the EliteForm liaison for him right now. He works with the Kistler plates. Great dude. And then you go, somewhere else where somebody's into gymnastics. So then you kind of get exposed to a little bit of everything. So you kind of fog a lot of stuff out. And then you can start to really get to know, like, hey, this is what I like to do. This is why this works. This is why this doesn't work. That might work, but it doesn't work for me. And you see that. And then you get to explore it over and over and over and over again because you got 20 teams that you're working with at a time. So I think definitely that was that was a game changer for me, was being down there and the experience that I got just for those reasons. The people, definitely the people.
So what do you think you took into one of the things that will come up almost in side conversations with coaches is sort of the interview processes you guys have to go through? Yeah. So like when you first interviewed at Temple,
yep.
Like what were some of the things that you sort of brought forward to sort of create the value that they ended up seeing in you?
I'll be honest, they didn't ask one question about strength conditioning in my interview. Not one, not even during the interview process. They have no idea. I don't even know if Coach McKee still knows what the heck I do. I don't even know if he knows what EliteForm is at this point. Like, it was more just about my passion and me being genuine in the stance of just talking to them and connecting with the people and them understanding of who I was and what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. They just kind of almost bought in more to the person, I guess. And it was because I connected so well with Coach, with the staff, and we have similar things. You ask about questions. One of the first things he asked me about was actually golf. He found out that I was a golfer. We talked for 40 minutes on my interview about golf. So it was funny. And it was
So is your golf game that good, or is it did you have a shared sort of level of play where you could connect that way?
Well, I played collegiately, and I think that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's one of the more interesting points. Is I might be the only golfer turned strength coach, maybe ever in the history of college basketball strength conditioning. I don't know any other college basketball strength coaches that were former collegiate golfers, so that's very rare and random. So that's it's almost like a point, which is cool. You see in the basketball world, golf is so popular. I mean, you've seen The Last Dance. I mean, Michael Jordan's obsessed with golf. And I've noticed most retired basketball players or people later in their career, they drive straight to it because the competitiveness, you can gamble with it, you can do all of these things. And there's nothing more interesting to those people than people that are good at golf. So whenever they see you hit a golf ball, they're just in absolute amazement. So it's been kind of funny just to see how that's played a part into my profession, and it was just something that has nothing to do with what I do now.
So at IMG or anywhere else, did you ever combine being the S&C guy over a golf team? Has that happened yet?
They started to talk to me about it a little bit towards the end, and I wanted to stay as far away from it as possible. because I was already tabbed a freaking golf guy, and every person I ever talked to in my career told me, like, what are you doing? Go into golf. You can go work at a country club. You can go do this. You can go do that, and you'd make way more money. And I just didn't want to do that. I've always been really passionate about basketball, and I've always been passionate about other sports. It was just a situation where, like, I'm 5'8", 185 pounds, moderately strong and not fast at all. So, like, I just wasn't that great at other sports. So golf just was one of those things. So I just played every sport growing up. Golf just happened to be what I got good at.
That's super fascinating. I had no idea. So what is your strength as a golfer?
Strength as a
Or are
golfer?
you just well-rounded? Yeah, like you hit it long. Well, you were looking at Tiger Woods and looking at how to drive it long last time we talked.
Oh,
So,
yeah. That's I'd say honestly my competitiveness was probably my anchor that I kind of stood on a little bit. I was pretty competitive and I had a lot of confidence. I was almost cocky to a point where I didn't practice nearly enough, but I was still pretty good.
we won't tell any of your athletes that.
No, but the thing is weird. I'd be playing different things. Like even during the golf season, I was like I don't want to say I was like Michael Jordan because that sounds silly, but I was playing like during the season. I'd be playing basketball. I'd be doing this. I'd be doing that. I was just constantly doing something. I was just always active, but I always had confidence in whatever the heck I was doing. So it was fun. Yeah, I don't know what exactly my strength is. I guess it was just more my confidence.
So that what's interesting though is I think someone could argue, and I would, that could apply to anything, right? So
Absolutely, yeah.
if you go into a situation, kind of with confidence, like with that competitive attitude,
Yep.
more often than not, it's going to aid you as opposed to hinder you, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's what. So when I talk about strength and conditioning, that was what strength and conditioning like did for me whenever I was younger. It's why I got into the field, to be honest, because whenever I was 16, I was a fat kid. I was just a kid that was coordinated but couldn't really move. But I played all the different sports, and I actually broke my leg. And then a guy that was in Robinson who did strongman competitions, he CrossFitted a little bit. He was just into doing stuff. He kind of took me in, was like, "Hey, dude, like you're super fat. You need to get your shit together." And I just started training with him, and I eventually started training twice a day, and I got obsessed with it. And it gave me that confidence that I kind of talked about, and it kind of fed over into a lot of different things. To be honest, it fed over into my personal life, into sports, into my profession, into kind of just everything that I did. And then you start to understand what confidence can kind of do for you. And that's really like golf and any sport. Honestly, if you're not confident or feel good about the work that you put in or whatever you've done, then chances are that, you won't be very good, no matter how talented you are, for sure. I see that with my kids even today.
What was that?
I see that with my kids even today. Like they could be unbelievably talented, but if you lack confidence and a lot of different things, or you don't really realize how good you are or have confidence in the work that you've put in, and you get to that game and you're in a situation where you're hesitant, you lose. 9 times out of 10, you lose.
Well, yeah, hesitating is a great way to minimize any advantages you may
Anything,
have
yeah,
had in the moment, right?
for sure, yeah.
Yeah, so do you feel like then going back to that interview process, a lot of these things we were just talking about, whether you were directly expressing it or indirectly expressing it, that was coming out and kind of what they saw in you to bring you on in terms of having you a part of the staff?
Yeah, now coach says that. He tells me my biggest attribute, honestly, just my boss tells me my biggest attribute is my kind of how I speak and how I look at things, and I feel confident about the things that I've done just because I've tried them, I practiced them, I've made sure that they work, and I've seen what doesn't work. I've screwed up multiple times, and then I fixed it, and then I've applied it, and then I just I'm okay to say that, okay, I kind of screwed that up. Let's try this over and over again. So I think that definitely has to do with passion too. I don't think it's hard to be really passionate about something and speak if you're not confident in it. Myself, that's what.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, you've got to kind of know your stuff, right?
Yep.
So you can speak intelligently, and then if you have a passion for it, those things sort of combine to
Right.
create that air of confidence. And then if you can get that across to your team,
Yep.
um, so which is where the communication piece sits, right? Sometimes, verbal or nonverbal, right?
Yep.
Guys own the room in a variety, coaches own the room in a variety of ways.
Yep.
That all becomes important. So, like, do you feel like your group right now is pretty competitive, or is that something you're still working? I guess with so many new people coming in, maybe you don't know yet, but like,
You,
do you feel like that is something that's going to grow within your program as you're there?
yeah, I think so because just knowing the kids and the interactions that I've had, like I think that I'm pretty good about that. Just when you speak with somebody, you understand kind of who they are a little bit. Like after you have a conversations with somebody, you understand like are they timid, are they confident, are they not? You can kind of just get a feel for somebody, and I think that I'm really excited about that because we got some young guys that are really really competitive, and then our returners are as well. And I think the biggest thing is too, and this was another step in my confidence as well as vulnerability and being able to be vulnerable and be able to understand like, hey, like maybe I'm not so good at this, but I need to try this. Because in order to really be confident in something, you got to be able to try different things and experience failure and then actually be able to conquer it. That's why I think that there's a lot of different training techniques that you can do to kind of help somebody that might not make sense from a programming standpoint or a periodization standpoint, but just giving somebody confidence because this is something they couldn't do before, but now they can, or this is something they feared before, but now they don't. Like anytime you can do that and you can kind of take away any limitations that they might have had, then you can kind of instill some of that in them. And that's the only thing that I think that's with everybody, but I see that in some of my guys is we got to be willing to be a little bit more vulnerable with our peers and the people that are around us.
Yeah, the idea of being comfortable with failing, uh, one, it translates to so many different things, but it is a very difficult thing for people to get comfortable with because many times, like obviously failing, like failing at your job, people worry about losing their job, right? And so uh, that's where leadership, mentorship, etc., plays a bigger role than like everyone knew it's important, everyone knows it's important, but like being able to sort of step back and let somebody like truly grow is uncomfortable on both sides to some degree.
And that's not overcoaching either. And I think that's we were talking about being a raw strength coach or me being high energy and whatnot. I think the people that had the most impact in my life and kind of who I am were the people I just didn't want to disappoint. They weren't really the people that yelled at me all the time. They weren't really those people. They were more the point that like really took an initiative to help me and really like were put me in situations that made me realize maybe not in that time but later like hey this is kind of why they did this. You start playing and you start living your life to not disappoint certain people. There's probably 5 or 6 people in my life now that like I think about whenever I make certain changes in my life or I do certain things, it's to really not disappoint them. And that's like what really drives me and probably why I work hard, other than the fact of seeing my dad work really hard for a really long time to provide for our family and changing jobs and now that we're in a comfortable place, a good place, but that was strictly because of how hard he worked. But now you're in a situation where like I saw that, and then I saw the certain people that kind of took initiative in my life. Scott Rawlings was one of them, the strength coach I was telling you about when I was in high school. And there was another guy, my grandparents had passed away whenever I was young. So he kind of stepped into my life as almost like a mentor and just a guy that I played golf with. He wasn't even trying to really be that person for me, but I just never wanted to let him down when it came to golf or anything else. So those were true leaders in my life, and they didn't ever yell at me. So
Well, it's that's always interesting. You brought up the guy who maybe he wasn't intentionally like trying to be a mentor for you or supply guidance, but that just proves the point that oftentimes people see us in a way we're not expecting. And
yep,
so sort of this concept of you just live your life, right? Like trying to be a proper role model, do the right thing. You never know who's watching.
all the time, all the time. And we talked about that with, like that was the thing with, I think that's what drove like Michael Jordan to be so awesome, is because he constantly talked about somebody might be seeing him play for the first time and they might think like, oh, he's not that good. And that's what drove him literally every single time that he played basketball, and why he practiced so hard, why he did everything, because he never wanted to disappoint somebody that watched him. A lot of that's ego, obviously. Maybe I'm really ego driven in the sense where I don't want people to think less of me. But that's part of what drives, I think, certain people to be really competitive and a lot of times to be really successful. So I think that that's unbelievably important. And that's why I think it's leadership is in so many different ways. And I hope that I can create relationships with my guys where they understand how much I care about them, so that they get to that point where, like, Brady has put in a lot of effort. I'm starting to understand what he says. I don't want to disappoint him. Like, that would be that'd be next level for me. That's fulfilling. That's why I do it.
Oh, absolutely. And so then, like, do you feel like, you go from IMG where you've got, obviously we were saying a lot of reps, just all these kids, right, that you're trying to do right by. And now you're able to whittle that down into a basketball roster size. Like, what are the things that sort of you're now freed up to do that you couldn't have done before? Like, are there certain things where you're like, well, this is great because now I can do X, Y, and Z?
I can do a lot more personal training. I can go to lunch more. I can be at more things like practice. I can be at film. And those are things that because I like basketball damn near just as much as I like weightlifting. So for me, like, I absolutely love hoops, so I'm around all the time. Those are the things that I can do now that I wasn't always able to do at IMG because I was always coaching. So I never really, until my last year, I finally was able to kind of work it out a little bit. They gave me somebody kind of underneath me that was able to do certain things. So then I was finally able to kind of transition into that. But I wasn't really able to do that. So I guess if that could kind of go into your negative, I guess, before of what you're saying, like for IMG, I just wasn't able to be around as much.
We'll qualify that as the answer to Avery's question, right?
Yep.
And move from, I mean, it sounds like, to put words in your mouth, tell me if you feel this way, like you feel like you're truly a part of the, if you want to call it sports team, but like the basketball staff, right?
Yeah, for sure. I feel that. And I want to feel that. That's like important to me. And I want them to feel that, whenever they look at it, they want to think that my investment is that I'm not just like an outside guy, that I'm like part of it. And their investment, that my investment matches their investment.
Well, it's always interesting for us. We've got this sort of outsider view as EliteForm. We get to know the strength staff, and then we get to know sort of their knowledge base and what they're capable of. And then so there's always that conversation of, for whatever sport it is that sport taking advantage, right, of everything that their strength staff knows, is able to do, their understanding of the kids? And it seems like that's a constant work in progress.
I think it is, but I think that more relies on, like I said before, time, being around, and building relationship with that staff. And understanding that every conversation that you have with that person can't be a conditioning at all. Like, I've gotten to know my staff through golf, through playing pickup basketball, and none of that has to do with sets and reps. None of that has to do with EliteForm technology. The guys, that's just them believing and building a relationship with me as a person because we're close, and now we build like a friendship. Now they'll listen to me a lot more. Like, I can bring something up. Okay, well, we trust Brady because of the person that he is, rather than he's just bringing information. All you're doing is bringing information, and you're wondering why they're not taking the information. Oh, why are they not listening to me? Or why, why are they not doing this, or why not doing that? Coach is going over in practice, or this. And some coaches are more approachable than others. I do believe that, but I think everybody can find ways to build relationships with people and get them to understand and start to believe in the person. And I think that's the more important way to look at it is, what can I do to be able to kind of, and you got to sacrifice time, sacrifice different things just to be able to connect with people and get them to realize your investment. Has nothing to do with transition.
Well, at the end of the day, and I know we feel this way, and it's a bit of a softball because I'm pretty sure you feel the same, but we're in a relationship business.
Absolutely.
Like we point cameras at people. You know exactly how to interpret those things that we spit out, but still at the end of the day, the kid that did the lift,
Yeah.
and your relationship with that kid is going to be the most meaningful thing that's happening in that room that day.
Like if I increase, one of my kids' verts by 2 inches, that's not going to mean near as much as if I instill some type of confidence, some type of vulnerability, his ability to patch relationships with certain people, whether it's in the team, whether it's in their life, whether it's, whatever it is, for them to kind of make, forward steps, become better people. That's way more important than anything I could do in the weight room. And then this is just kind of my vessel to work in. Like the weight room is just kind of my vessel to really work with these kids. And I think that if you're only looking at it from a sports performance standpoint, then you're missing the boat. But that's just me. I'm a relationship-based person, and what strength and conditioning did for me was just a lot more than sets and reps, increased vertical, increased back squat, increased this. It did a lot more for me, and it's the reason why I'm here and feel pretty good about what I've done and everything else.
So you mentioned that you'll play pickup basketball with the basketball staff. We've talked a little bit about your golf game and that you were a golfer, but how's your pickup basketball game?
I'm a hustle guy, big hustle guy. Play real hard. I can make an open shot, and I'm trying to get people involved. I guess that would be more my game. My high school and middle school career was not. The class in front of me won a state championship. And then my class might have been the worst class in the history of Robinson High School when it comes to basketball. We didn't win. We won 2 games in my entire middle school career. And then the class above me actually won a state championship. So it was a big.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was a rough transition for that coaching staff, most likely, we might say.
Massive, rough. Yeah, actually, he ended up resigning after that. Won state championship, had my class, resigned.
Well, that sounds like not accepting the challenge. I don't know the guy.
Great guy.
I'm just kidding.
Being the principal, he ended up being a whole bunch of different things. But I will say that my class was just not very good at basketball, me included. But I'm a lot better now than I was before. But I'm a big hustle guy, big glue guy on the basketball court.
So we'll pencil you in as that role player, making everybody else better.
Big role player, yeah. Big role player. More of the driver on the court than a role player on the basketball court.
So here's what we'll do. The next time, I haven't been out there to see the facility. When I'm out there, we'll have to do this. So I was a basketball guy to a great degree, right? But yet, I'm only 5'9". Right? Yep. So we match up pretty well. But I can't golf to save my life.
Oh.
So a really good friend of mine tried his best to get me into golf in college. And I could do an amazing job of almost hitting the ball in a circle, right? So that's how much slice, I would guess, right, we're talking about.
You're going right. It's actually a hook. But
okay, I'm going left to right.
Okay. There you go. Yeah, then that's a massive slice.
Yep. So played baseball, played in college, had the baseball swing, and I could actually hit a ball straighter if I just put the club on my shoulder and took it from there.
Oh.
As opposed to actually trying to hit the ball what I thought might be a proper golf swing. So we'll have to do maybe in the morning, we'll hoop, right? In the afternoon, we'll golf, and we'll see how that balances out over the course of the day. But, it's a pretty sad state of affairs when you get me on a golf course. So
you got
see how we do there.
I'm just telling you, it's it's been pretty good. You can take clients out. You can fly in. I don't know how many strength coaches play golf, though. I will be honest. There's not as many as there are basketball coaches. A lot of basketball coaches play golf. Not a lot of strength coaches play golf.
Fair enough. Well, we'll just match it up however we see fit. And so for us, I think it's hoops and golf. We can get that done.
Golf, bourbon, and cigars.
Perfect. I've made the mistake on a few of these IG lives where I let it roll and then Instagram kicks you off after an hour.
Yeah.
So anything you wanted to talk about, though, before we sort of end the session?
No.
So what is the bourbon of choice right now?
Eagle Rare. Big fan of Eagle Rare, actually. It's not.
Okay, Avery is really into bourbon and a variety of other things, so he might know what you're talking about. I do not.
Bourbon would be Bullet. If you know Bullet. Do you know Bullet?
I do know Bullet, yep.
Like the simple bourbon. That's a really simple bourbon that you can drink. I actually like that. And I have to say that my bourbon actually came from, have you seen Peaky Blinders?
Oh, that's my show.
Okay. I used to drink bourbon with a little splash of ginger ale in it.
Okay.
Since watching that show, I don't smoke cigarettes. They smoke cigarettes the whole show. But
yeah, for sure.
I do drink, they probably drink scotch, but I drink my bourbon neat now because of that show. And now I think my appreciation for it has exponentially grown, and I have to give all the credit to Peaky Blinders for that.
As long as you're not sewing razor blades in your hats,
yeah,
I'm good, man.
Not doing that, but I will say that Thomas Shelby is one of the ultimate badass.
Absolutely. Oh, you and I are totally on the same page there. After I watched the show for the first season, like the next day in the office, I was like, fellas, I don't know what you're watching these days, but you have to watch this show.
To get through, and anybody that's watching, the whole whopping 6 people, you got to get through the first episode. It took me probably 3 times watching it to get through it. But after you get through that and you start to really get into the show, it's the best show.
Absolutely. And it just keeps getting deeper each season.
Deeper every season. It gets better. The storyline changes. Thomas Shelby stays a badass the whole time. So he's probably my favorite character of all time for sure.
Oh, he's got to be one of the tops. I'm with you there completely. So
reason why I drink neat.
So we'll just when we order up, it'll just be Irish or Scotch.
Yes.
We know which way we're going.
Yep.
And that'll be that. I love it.
Yep.
All right, brother. Hey, I appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, we'll be in touch about a variety of other things. But and then maybe when we're out there, we can actually do a proper podcast as well.
That'd be great.
And go a little deeper on some of this stuff. So I appreciate it.
No problem, Skip.
All right. Have a great weekend, man.